Let's start it. Cool. You can find previous recordings on our YouTube channel, so youtube.com/@Arachne_digital. We are very interested in hearing your feedback, so I'm going to go ahead and just drop the link for the feedback form in advance. I'm going to share it at the end too, but anything that maybe we wish we didn't cover, you wish we covered, or even why you're here today is helpful for us in planning our future events and making sure that we deliver value. So this is open source cybersecurity contributor onboarding with Arachne Digital. We're going to cover introductions and icebreakers, our project pitch and priority issues for our open source projects, getting started with contributing, questions and answers, and how to stay in touch. So Jen is gone today, but there is Cade and myself. So I'm just going to start by giving a little introduction. My name is Vic. I use they, them pronouns. I'm the community manager for Arachne Digital. My background is in design and communications. I am newer to the cybersecurity space, but I do have a deep interest in open source and sustainability. I got my start with open source in 2015 with Open Austin, which is a local organization here in Texas that's focused on civic technology and engagement, along with like open source tech and everything that kind of touches. Outside of that, I'm really into poetry, like tarot, yoga, all the kind of woo-woo stuff. So if you like any of that, feel free to chat with me about it in Slack. And I'm going to share, Cade, if you'd like to share a little bit about yourself.
Hi, I'm Cade. My pronouns are he, him, and they, them. I've been working in cybersecurity for a few years now. I think we're coming up to 7 or 8 years. I'm one of the co-founders for Arachne Digital. This takes up a decent portion of my time, as far as processing threat intelligence and just all the other bits and pieces that sort of go on for the organization. But outside of work, I'm an avid reader when I can get the time. You can't see it, but I'm surrounded by bookcases on both sides of my room, which are all full of books. I'm a big sci-fi and fantasy nerd.
Thanks, Cade. And Jen is out. We hope she's having a lot of fun. She just posted recently in Random about being at, I think, like an orchestra for Final Fantasy. But she's the...
It looks like she's having fun.
Yeah, it looks like she's having fun. A big smile. But if you have any questions for her, she's available in Slack when she comes back. Cool. And Kate and I will do the best to answer anything that comes up. All right. So yeah, we're Arachne Digital. You can learn more about us at our website that Jen has been working to make the best version it can possibly be at arachne.digital. We're a global cybersecurity organization that focuses on threat intelligence, and we have open source tools that we utilize that you're going to learn more about here in a moment. So we kind of sit between open source software and cybersecurity. So if these are things you're interested in, you're definitely in the right space. Or if you have a growing interest, happy to chat about it here. We do host monthly events. So last week we hosted more of like an educational, informational series called Open Source Cybersecurity. And our topic was crypto crimes. So we talked about cyber criminals using cryptocurrency. Kate gave a great presentation. And it's not yet on YouTube, but it will be soon. And Samil was there. So thanks for joining us this week after that call. We appreciate it. We have 2 events a month. So this more like informational, community building one, and then our onboarding, which is more about our projects and like building community around our open source tools. So we're also starting to sponsor a new podcast, or not a new podcast, but we're newly sponsoring this podcast, Design for Life. And Kate can share a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so Design for Life is a podcast that I'd been listening to for a little bit now. And it just so turned out that in the course of looking at some stuff for the business side of Arachne Digital, it turned out that the person who runs the Design for Life podcast, Tony, they were looking for sponsors. We feel that we have a nice overlap in the sense that they very much do outreach to schools around looking at what career paths are looking like, preparing kids as they move into university, and then from university into the workforce. So looking at those paths for design and more and like technology broadly. As an open source project, like while there's not a specific link to security per se, we feel there's a nice overlap in the sense that open source is a nice gateway into other areas. Open source teaches real world skills. Open source is something tangible that you can go into job interviews and you can point to the code base and say, like, be it code you've written, or it can be events you've hosted, and we can have like evidence of events that'll be up on GitHub. Like whatever ways you want to contribute, you can point to that and say, look, these are my tangible skills. These are the things that I have done. That's going to put you in greater stead than someone just saying, okay, well, look, I have a degree. I don't have any demonstrated experience. You're just going to have to trust me. So we think that particularly looking at schools and people coming into the workforce, looking at how do they get those real world skills, we think community, we think things around building up like tangible skills to help them make that transition is a really nice overlap for open source. So it's something that we were quite proud to pitch in and sponsor.
Yeah, and then on a personal note, I think I mentioned my background is in communications and design, so that's how I came into open source, and it helped me get one of my first jobs out of college with an organization called Anaconda. So yeah, good stuff. So as we're moving through this, if you'd like to stay connected with us, we are on social media, Arachne Digital on LinkedIn, and also Arachne Digital on Blue Sky. We have a small group today, but hopefully we can get into all your questions and learn a little bit more about y'all as individuals. If you'd like to come off of mute, it'd be great to learn maybe about where you are, what time it is, and if there's any emoji that you're currently vibing with. If you don't know, I am in Texas right now, and it's like 1 p.m. and Cade is all the way in New Zealand, and it is early morning time for them. Oh, and I'm going to admit somebody that just came in. So yeah, if you want to come off mic and share, you're welcome to, or if you just want to drop it in the chat. It's always interesting to learn about where people are coming from and what time zone they're in. And hey, Serhi, we're just doing introductions and icebreakers. You're welcome to come off mic, or if you just want to drop in the chat. Or come on mic, I guess. If you can't tell from this slide, I'm a big fan of the sparkle emoji.
As Vic said, so I'm based in Wellington, New Zealand. It is relatively early for me, relatively. So it's 7:12 a.m. So kind of an early call, but I'm pretty used to the time zones not really aligning where I am. The emoji that I'm currently vibing with, I think, would be the thinking emoji. Just because there's like lots of things that we're trying to work through, just as we sort of like build stuff out.
I'm well. I'm coming from San Diego, so 11 in the morning here. Not too bad. Emoji. I think right now it's the scream emoji. You know, looking for work, and yeah, just frustration with that. So
We can definitely empathize with that.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't think you're alone in the looking for work thing. I think I just saw an article about, I think it's called Block. It's like the former CEO of Twitter, like Jack Dorsey, just like, I think it was like 900 or something employees just suddenly got let go. And lots of like cuts within the government too. So definitely you're not alone. Samuel, you're going for the dancing emoji. 11:30 p.m. for you. Yeah, last time Samuel joined us at like, I think it was like 1 a.m. or something. So props to you. Thanks for making us part of your late night or early morning. Sergey, if you'd like to share, you're welcome to. If not, we can move on to the next slide. Okay. And we do have a small group today. So we thought it would be good, stay on camera if you're comfortable. You can stay off if you're not. But we would just want to learn a little bit more about maybe your interest in open source cybersecurity, your interest in coming to this event, your interest in Arachne Digital. So maybe as Cade speaking or in the question and answers portion, we can really help answer any questions you have or consider covering or integrating anything that's brought up into our future events. So if anyone would like to volunteer to share a little bit more, that would be great.
Okay, guess I can go. So I have been contributing to open source.
Speak.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, Sergey, I think there was some trouble with your audio. Oh, yeah. One of there's like two of you in here and one just left the meeting. So let's let Samuel finish or start, and then we can move to you next. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, just like I was talking about, like I have been contributing to open source for a few years now. So the organization I am still contributing to is called Hack for LA. And I have learned a lot contributing, as Cade was also mentioning this, that open source is a really good way to learn, contribute, and build up your profile, and kind of helps your career in the long run. Even in the short run, it helps. So that's what I've been doing. I'm also applying for jobs, and I wanted to learn. Like I'm interested in cybersecurity. I do not have much exposure to it, but I think like if I can contribute a little bit as this opportunity comes up, then I guess it will be good. Might be good for getting into this space, learning, using. I'm not sure how much overlap would be between the skills that I have been using. So what I've been using was mostly JavaScript, React, and some Node. So so yeah, like if you can talk a little bit about what kind of skills I can bring while contributing to in the cybersecurity world, that will be great. So just excited to learn more about this.
Awesome.
Thank
Thanks for
you.
sharing. I appreciate it. Sarahi, do you want to go next? If you're, yeah.
Yeah, hello. I'm at some event here. So, my background in cybersecurity, mostly threat hunting, in general, I don't know, whatever cybersecurity, because before cybersecurity, I worked as test analyst, test automation, network engineer, all this stuff. Based in Scotland, not working at the moment, so available for volunteering anytime. So, and be happy to bring value and effort. Put my efforts to some valuable stuff. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. And thanks for joining us from Scotland as well. Will, I know you've been in our Slack for a minute. Do you want to share?
Oh, yeah. I am also currently volunteering Hack for LA. I know Samuel and I have spoken to each other like in the past. I don't know if you remember, but yeah. So working, doing the volunteering at Hack for LA, doing more, developer-oriented things. I am trying to get into cybersecurity right now. I've been, doing the certifications, but really need to have the real world experience. So I guess that's what I'm curious about, like what you guys are doing, in the cybersecurity realm of things. And would be interested in anything you're doing, really.
Awesome. Thanks, y'all, for sharing. Really appreciative. I took some notes. It's good for us to know and just like be aware of, what people are looking for. And I totally hear y'all on maybe being in between work or like looking for work and trying to like gain skills or just use your skills for good. I think that's a big thing. That's like why a lot of people are in open source. So I'm hopeful that we can sort of foster opportunities for y'all. So really appreciate it. So we're gonna go more now into like what our project is and what our priority issues are, and hopefully Cade can answer some of like the stuff that came up about our tech and like where you can fit in, and then I can add on to that when it comes to the contribution section. So Cade, do you want to start presenting?
Yeah, okay. Let's see if we can get this. Okay, let me know if that's coming through for you. Brilliant. Okay. So basically, we've got 3 different projects that people can contribute to. We're highlighting 2 of them because they're probably going to be an easier entry, particularly if people are coming from a programming background specifically. So we have Thread and we have Tracery. We're going to get into those a little bit. There's another one there called Spindle. If you are more interested in the specifically cyber threat intelligence piece of it, there is some work there, but as far as sort of the programming side of things, the actual applications themselves are Thread and Tracery, and both of them are still applied to cyber threat intelligence. Specifically, what Thread does is it's an application that is forked from MITRE. It's from MITRE Attack's TRAM project, which we'll get into in a second. But basically, it is an application that you will feed it a URL. You can also feed it documents, but primarily the use case is generally URLs. It will then scrape the text from that page, and using machine learning, it will then map that free text to what it feels is MITRE Attack TTPs. So TTPs are tactics, techniques, and procedures. These are basically the elements that MITRE has defined as far as the different ways that people will go about doing hacking. And if we can gather up information as far as how people are hacking and going about things, who is doing what, we can then basically start to leverage that framework to then start looking at what are the defenses that people should be putting in place. And I can talk to that more as well if people are at all interested. So yeah, we just basically think it's a very nice application as far as just taking this unstructured text and then using it to turn it into something that can be actually used as threat intelligence. So the primary use case will be for security operations centers. So SOCs is what we'll call them. And the idea is if you can understand if you know sort of the current threat actors that you need to be caring about, so the threat actors that are targeting your industry and your geography, you can tell who they are based on the research you've gone and conducted. if you know the techniques that they are using, what MITRE does in their framework, so what it does in attack will break down a technique and look at, okay, so here are the mitigations you should put in place as far as what's just going to stop that attack completely, or here are the detections you should put in place. So one, you can detect that it's occurred and then do something about it, or at least if you need to go back and retroactively do any investigation, you at least have that detective capability. You will have those logs available. So the thing that we are sort of like quite excited about in the sense is basically, I come from a security operations background, so I am a little biased in this sense. But it's very nice for us to say, okay, you can go from your threat landscape as far as like who targets your industry, your geography, figure out who those threat actors are, figure out what the actual techniques that they're using, figure out what you should put in place to defend against them. And on the detection side, you can actually go down to the log source that you need to have, and you can even go down to the field in that log source that you need. Generally, those logs would be ingested into some sort of a tool that can be a SIEM, so Security Information Event Management tool, or like an EDR, something sort of along those lines. SIEM is primarily what you're going to be looking at. So this is information that is specifically tailored to use in a security operations center. It can be used outside of that though. Attack can be relatively broad, and you can still get lots of like good mitigations, mostly on the mitigation side, that'll tell you you should have in place programs around DLP, so data loss prevention and that kind of stuff. So it's still very useful information, even if you're not at the maturity level of having a SOC. But if you do have a SOC, like there's some stuff that we can really help out there. So threads inception. So we basically used MITRE's TRAM, their application, to build upon. So TRAM is now quite old. It's quite a few years old. I think we're talking like maybe almost 10 years old potentially, for when it initially came out. And just as far as like large organizations or like organizations that are sort of like tied into government, MITRE not being a government body, but is sort of like relatively closely aligned with the US government, like big organizations, competing priorities. Open source is not always the highest priority for these organizations. So TRAM was released and the project was kind of stagnant. So it was kind of just sitting there. We decided to fork TRAM and we started to build upon that. And we added in new features, new functionality. In a lot of cases with open source, we would push those features back to the initial project. It turns out that TRAM got re-released and it was architecturally quite different. So at that point, we decided that there's not a great deal of utility in us sort of re-architecting our version just to get these features back in. So we've now just basically sort of run our own like standalone application. And so that has become what we call Thread. But it did come out of sort of one of MITRE's projects. We have a full walkthrough online. If there's any questions that you have as far as how to install Thread, so Thread can be installed locally as well as running it from a web application. That we host an application online that people can just sort of like browse to in there, like just through their browser. They can just use that. Alternatively, if you want to use it locally, you can run it locally, and again, sort of just run it in your browser, but it'll be running on localhost. You can do either one of those. This video will run you through how you can look at doing that. It runs you through how to actually use the application, and it touches a little bit on sort of the information that it produces, how that can actually be used. And we're now starting to talk a little bit more about Tracery as well. So Tracery is the other application that we have. Again, Tracery is a fork. So Tracery has come from the project called Cirx. And what it does is it's basically a tool that helps us do open source intelligence. So where Thread basically needs to have information fed into it so that it can produce these TTPs, we need to get that information in some way. And the way that we do that is Tracery. Tracery is just a meta search engine. So it's a search engine of search engines. And it basically just lets us pump a number of keywords into multiple search engines all at once and then get those URLs back. So rather than sort of doing that by hand, we basically have Tracery doing that around the clock. And that pulls in a vast amount of information that's then analyzed with Thread. So basically, like if there's anything that you might be interested in more so on sort of that collection side of things, rather than the analysis side of things, we have an application for that as well. Some recent updates. Janine, we have some new functionality that's sort of planned for Thread that's going to be coming out relatively soon. So in preparation for that, Janine has been going through our code base and doing some refactoring. Because our projects come from forked, like pre-existing applications, we don't control the code base before it comes to us. So the code base can be in sort of varying states of quality. And then once we have it, we will start to go through and clean it up and sort of get it to where we would like it to be. And that can be for a number of reasons, like particularly like, so my understanding with Tram before we forked it was that it was just like 2 interns that did an amazing job building this application at MITRE, I believe like in their lunchtime, if I'm not mistaken. So they just sort of built this thing just as interns. But given the fact that it's like they're interns, like they don't necessarily sort of have like long like industry experience or necessarily have like people that are training them in sort of like how to actually build an application that's going to like stand the test of time in a enterprise setting. So there has been some cleanup that we have gone through and done just sort of make the code base a little bit more accessible for people. And that's some of the work that Janine's been looking at. So if you were wanting to dive into Thread, we've done a lot of work to basically sort of get that code base to a approachable standard. And there's been some recent work that Janine's been doing around that. For Tracery, we are now starting to get to that process. Tracery was forked from Cirx. Cirx, unfortunately, ceased to be supported a little while back. And there's been a couple of different forks of Cirx. We had reasons for going with the one that we did. There is still a different fork that is being maintained, but just for various reasons, we decided that we wanted to go with this one that was not being, well, it was being maintained when we initially forked. It is now no longer being maintained. Now that it's not maintained, it falls to us. We are now the sole maintainers, and we will take that forward. We are now getting into sort of like the ins and outs of what that code base is actually looking like. We have the application and it's running, but we do want to sort of like clean it up, get it to be like in a very, very good state. So we're working through that process of looking at that at the moment. So the tickets we've been having a look at, so Janine has posted that ticket for Thread. That is the one that is sort of running through the different changes that they've been making. And then issue 26 on the Tracery side is the next piece of functionality that we would like to look at. That piece of functionality is looking at, we've found that there's some interesting interplay as far as like we try to reach out to multiple search engines at once. The search engines are always changing. So there will be different things as far as they will want different parameters for when you're making the call. They might change the way that the actual call is made. They don't necessarily announce that, and there's a few of them that we sort of have to keep across. So we find that some search engines will come up, some will come down, just as sort of things are moving around. We're looking at building in functionality so that we can get notifications as far as these ones are working, these ones are not, and some basic troubleshooting to figure out, can we get them to be working quickly? Basically, just so we can do some monitoring in a more proactive, responsive way, rather than sort of going in every now and again and finding sort of what has silently sort of broken as the browsers have sort of changed things on their side. We have quite a few tickets that are listed out for Thread. We have less so for Tracery. We still do have an idea as far as what the roadmap is for both. It's just down to as far as like raising tickets around them. If you have any questions, we have documentation on the roadmaps for both Thread and Tracery in their respective GitHub repositories. Equally, if there's anything as far as you're looking at the tickets and you're like, oh, nothing really resonates with me, feel free to reach out. We are more than happy to have a discussion and figure out if there's a specific thing you want to work on. If there's a specific sort of piece of functionality you might be interested in, we can see sort of where that fits into the roadmap. We can make tickets around that kind of stuff. We can bring that forward if there's people that are interested in that. So you can have a look basically at our GitHub. You'll see the sort of current priorities there. If you have any questions, you can reach out to us. We are more than happy to create any tickets around these. Just at a very high level, what we're looking at for Thread is we're looking at the disarm implementation. So we currently use Attack as the main framework that is basically mapping free text to TTP, so tactics, techniques, and procedures, to get us that threat intelligence that Thread provides. We are also interested in disinformation. Disinformation is a sister discipline to cybersecurity, but we feel that it's has quite a lot of overlaps, and the idea of using a framework is quite applicable. So we are looking at implementing a framework that is going to help us with the analysis of disinformation, and that framework is called Disarm. That is sort of the disarm implementation we're looking at there. We also want to work through a UX UI overhaul. As we've forked from Tram, we've been adding in new features, and we do sort of need to clean the UI up a little bit. So there is some design work that we'd like to do for Threads there. And we'd like to get the indicators of compromise. So currently, if you flag indicators of compromise, they will appear in the data that Thread has, but they don't appear in the reports if you're just using the reports that are generated. And we'd like to get those into the reports as well. So we have a ticket around that. At a high level again for tracery, we want to get through an audit of the code base just to figure out what the dependencies are. We want to look at anything around unsafe like code as far as like how memory is allocated. That's a big area for vulnerabilities. So now that we are the new maintainers, we want to be doing a good job at making sure that we are following secure coding practices. So we want to get an understanding of sort of how that's looking. We want to migrate any elements that are found to be using like memory in an unsafe way to new languages. And then we want to look at building that core piece of functionality for us to be maintaining the search engines. And then we can look at further things down the track. Does anyone have any questions on any of that? I'm going to stop sharing, but if there's any questions, feel free to drop them. I'm more than happy to sort of go through them now. Otherwise, if not, Vic has some more slides that they can go through.
Yeah, I know that was a lot of links and information to take in, so I'll just provide a pause in case y'all have anything that came up that you might want to ask now.
It's all very interesting. I imagine I'm going to have a lot of questions, but I'm going to want to wade through it first. But yeah, it's very interesting.
I mean, like if you like are thinking like, hey, maybe I have some questions, I want to look at some stuff, and then sort of come back. Like, we're more than happy to answer those in the Slack channel that we've got. If you want to approach like either myself, Vic, or Janine directly. Janine's currently away at the moment, but they will be back relatively soon. But if there's anything, like we are more than happy to either answer them like in these calls, in Slack, in any way that's going to help people. So more than happy to sort of like help out in that respect.
Awesome, thank you.
So I was just thinking like you mentioned there are like kind of broadly some issues. Like, would it be possible to, like, when I go through it, to know like, okay, this one might be a smaller one, this might be a bigger task up front. So would it be possible to know about that when we have a look at the issue?
We have started to tag the issues with sort of various elements to give people a guidance as far as this is sort of what you'll be looking at for each of the tickets. I will need to check if we have anything around sizing. If we don't, I know that we do have it on the backlog. There may be some work that's either already in the tickets that lists about sizing. If not, I know that it is something that we are looking at. You should be able to get a sense of the size from the content of the ticket itself. But it is something that we can take away to make sure that we have clear tagging to make sure that sizing is listed against each of those tickets. I believe we may have sort of good contributor as like this is a good first issue. We may have that tag listed against some. Those would be a good indication as far as like this one, as well as being smaller, might be a little bit more approachable. And yeah, again, happy to answer any questions that anyone, if you have a ticket and you're like, this ticket interests me, I don't know how big it is, I'm more than happy to answer that as far as like, if you want to come to me and ask any questions, or Janine when she's available as well. So yeah.
Yeah, we don't currently have the sizing tag. I just double checked, but there is the good first issue tag. And like Kate mentioned, you can leave a comment in the GitHub, or we have the questions about contributing channel, direct DM, ask AMA leadership. There's lots of channels to ask questions. If you have any, we're available.
Thank you.
Awesome. All right. So I'm going to go to the next few slides, and then if there's going to be more time if y'all have more questions. So a couple of things, like as you're getting started, you know, maybe you find some issues you're interested in, or things that you want to explore and dig into further. Something that you first want to do is get familiar with our code of conduct and our contributor guidelines. And I'll make sure I drop a link. Sorry, I have a few tabs open right now. Yeah, make sure you get familiar with these two things. And then also just know that we have like just our community building efforts as well, where this is where I keep track of like different events or things that we're doing in order to help grow this space. So maybe you're wanting to get more involved with like the communications and stuff like that. This is also an area that you can poke around in. So that's kind of what we have for today. We have 20 minutes left, so if there's any more questions, or we can also, if y'all would like to review, the issues now or check anything out, you're welcome to. Yeah, and I'll give you space too, again, just to like take everything in, because like I said, there's a lot of links that were dropped. I'm going to go ahead and drop the one that links to our community repository that has more about our guidelines and code of conduct.
Megan, while people are thinking about questions, I guess just to touch on a couple of points I think might be helpful for both of the, sort of the points that were raised earlier. As far as like looking at, like I know, Simil, you mentioned that, hey, I've got experience in set languages. As far as looking at like how that might be applicable, each of the GitHub repositories has the language that each sort of section of what we have is written in. Now, I don't know if we're necessarily going to have sections that are specifically to the languages that you already have experience in, but we will list out, so this is the language that we are looking at. We've got pretty comprehensive information in the documentation that Vic just pointed to earlier, as far as like style guidelines. We put a decent amount of work into sort of figuring and sort of like shaping that up so that it should be relatively straightforward as far as figuring, okay, if I want to contribute, this is the way the code should be written. These are the kind of the standards that we're after as far as like relatively readable code, comments, like functions that have like clearly explicit names and this kind of stuff. So we have documentation that should help to bridge that transition as far as like, cool, I don't necessarily know that specific language. I know a different language though. Here is a documentation that will show me around, okay, this is what is expected as far as like how to contribute to this code base. And then it's down to figuring out, is this a new language you want to get into? And is that something that you want to help out with? Janine is our primary programmer, and they would be a great source as far as like, if you have any questions as far as like, hey, I'm new with this language. How do I do this particular thing in this language? Janine is definitely like, she'll be all over that. And I guess the other question that was raised as far as sort of like how is all this sort of applicable to cybersecurity and that kind of stuff, I touched on it a little bit. I guess I just wanted to hop on it just to sort of like help with like clarity around sort of like where does this fit in the grand scheme of things as far as like cybersecurity itself. We have basically built our applications to produce data or produce intelligence, I should say. We have our intelligence cycle. We basically go from unstructured data to structured information to intelligence that can be applied in a security sense. But that intelligence, the way that we shape it up is it comes from this idea of threat-informed defense. If you want to sort of get across those like current concepts, particularly as far as like how they are being applied to cybersecurity, threat-informed defense is a concept that is popularized by MITRE themselves, and it's looking at how can MITRE attack and other frameworks that they produce be applicable in this current modern age to cybersecurity. Threat intelligence has this problem as far as like you might know who your threats are, and that's great if you know that, okay, Fancy Bear is going to be attacking this particular organization that you're interested in. What do you do with that information? And that's sort of where intelligence will often fall over. Threat-informed defense tries to bridge that gap as far as getting us to, okay, we know who our threat actors are, figuring out the techniques, and then figuring out what defenses should be in place. There's more as on the back end of that as far as then testing those defenses and then ingesting more threat intelligence, because intelligence will always be changing over time, and going through this iterative process that you would do within your organization. We focus on the intelligence side because that's what we produce. So if you have any questions around sort of like how does this work in reality, like I would encourage anyone to have a look at threat-informed defense as a concept, and then looking at sort of like how the intelligence is applied. That is sort of where we fit into that piece. And yeah, any other questions, like more than happy to answer those here or in Slack at any point that anyone wants. So.
Yeah, and then to build on that too, like part of why we have our other calls that aren't our contributor onboarding is to like help grow the knowledge and understanding of the application of like threat-informed defense and how cybersecurity is important in the real world. So if you're newer to the space, like keep an eye out for those events because it's an opportunity to kind of like hear or see how things work in action. And we're working to plan a future event that has somebody from MITRE too, so they can like speak as well about what MITRE attack is if it's something you're not familiar with. In the past, we had our partners at Disarm speak, and that's also on our YouTube too, so you can learn a little bit more about the disinformation aspect. And yeah, if there aren't any more questions, there's like a few more slides just about like getting involved, but I'll pause again just to leave space.
Okay, maybe then it might be covered later as you're saying, but I was just curious, like as far as contributions are concerned, like what would be the expectation, like in terms of like maybe like a fixed amount of hours per week, or like would there be like kind of a like a team meeting to like monthly or weekly or something of that nature? So I'm just curious to learn a little more about that if that's part of it.
Absolutely. I guess to answer that very quickly, so there's no expectation as far as any allotted time. It's basically whatever time you are free to contribute and would like to contribute. So it's not an expectation as far as like you must do a certain amount of hours. This is specifically designed to be flexible and to work to anyone's sort of circumstances. We want to make this sort of as easy as possible in that sense. We don't yet have sort of like regular calls as far as like the open source contributions themselves. But we do have our Slack channel, and Janine is sort of be the point of contact as far as the code contributions. As we grow, we probably will have calls that will look at so just specifically the developer contributions and how that's moving along. But at the moment, like asynchronous updates in Slack, just given sort of like the size that we're at the moment, is like how we're working things, and we will sort of formalize that as that structure is needed to come in down the track. I don't know if you had anything you wanted to add, Vic?
Yeah, Yeah, no, there's not a current expectation for time. We do have someone that did start looking at an issue named Max that's in Slack, and it was nice that, you know, when they found an issue they liked, they left a comment and then said, hey, by this date, I'll give an update. And we were able to say, oh, awesome, it's cool to see that you're looking at this. Here's some additional resources that might provide context. So yeah, communication, I think, is great. It's easy.
Yeah.
If for some reason, you know, there's like a roadblock, or like if we see, hey, I said I'm going to provide an update this day, I haven't, you know, we can check in, but it's not like a lot of pressure. Just, you know, sometimes people pause because they're like, oh, I don't know enough about this, or maybe you do need to talk with somebody face to face to have better understanding, and we can work to try to schedule that or do asynchronous chat. And then I will say too, to like the team meeting, I missed this week, but I've been trying to like pilot like weekly, just like co-working time. So like maybe you just like need somebody to sit with you while you're like, okay, I'm gonna like work with this. So in the community building channel, I've been testing a new platform to just like, hey, I'm gonna be here for like an hour. Again, maybe you're just more comfortable talking in person about stuff that you're looking at. Janine's popped into some of those too. It's just kind of depending on time, because you're like, you know, it's really late where you're at and it's like midday where I am. So it's kind of like, you know, we're doing our best and we're trying to see what works. And if you have any suggestions, you know, we're also very open to hearing them because everybody has been pretty spread out. I think last call we had someone from Africa too as well. So we're all across time zones here.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna pause a little bit longer and then I'll move to the next slide. Or actually, you know what? There's the raise hand function, and I should encourage its use because that's also helpful. All right, we'll move on because we have like 10 minutes. So I'm just going to say how to stay in touch. So there's lots of ways to join us. One is by saying hello in Slack. I won't post the link because I know both of y'all are already in there. So thank you for joining. We appreciate it. It's a direct way to communicate with the team. Sorry if you can hear my cat in the background. I swear she's not neglected. And then you can join us on social, which is where you'll hear updates about stuff that we're working on, events that we have planned, or maybe any news or articles that might interest you in the space as well. So LinkedIn and Blue Sky, those are the two places you will find us. It's on the event page, but I'll be sure to include it in our follow-up as well. And last but not least, I'm pretty sure this is like the last slide. We would really like to hear your feedback. I know, Will, this is your first time joining. I think you were interested in a previous event. So if there's something you're like, oh, this could have been done better, or I wish, you know, this happened instead, or I really like this, let us know, because that will help us improve things in the future. This is our second one of these calls for this year, and it's going to happen monthly. So we're working to, make them better. And Sunil, same too. If there's any feedback, you know, we'd really appreciate just taking a moment to provide that, especially if after you maybe reviewed our materials online or the links that we shared and anything comes up, it's super, super needed. And that's all we have for today. So I really appreciate y'all sticking around with us. Again, we have recordings online from previous conversations we've had. And then this one and then the event we had last week will be posted soon as well. So thanks for joining us. I'll pause here in case there's any last words y'all want to share, and then we will be ending the call.
No, thank you. Thank you for the introduction.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for
Thank you for coming along.
Yeah, looking forward to digging through all this. So.
Oh yeah, and I didn't mention it, but we did have a conversation with GitHub too, and there's a panel we're trying to organize for May, so I think that will be a good one to look out for as well. Where the idea would, May is maintainer month for GitHub. So like talking about open source maintenance more broadly. I know they'll have things too going on. So we'd love for y'all to join us, but in general, we'd love for people to be in the open source ecosystem and finding ways to find work or build skills or build, great projects together. So awesome. Well, thanks, y'all. We're going to go ahead and close the call now. We'll be in Slack. Or did you need to say something, Sunil? Sorry.
No, I just saying thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you.
Have a good rest of y'all's day. Bye.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Yay.
Okay, I'm stopping.